8 in 10 British musicians touring in Europe said they have lost income due to Brexit, and they said it in a new survey. In a UK music survey based on 1,461 responses from musicians, singers, composers, lyricists, producers, and DJs, British artists described their increasing expenses and challenges as a result of Brexit. The survey was conducted between April 4th and June 1st in 2023 and evaluated in September 23. Almost 1 in 3 musicians who took part in the survey said their income had been affected since the UK officially left the EU on January 31st in 2020. Of those whose income was affected by Brexit, 82% said their income had fallen. Musicians, DJs, and singers were the most affected. Only 1 in 5 of music professionals said their income had improved post-Brexit, with 18%. In a blow to efforts to increase UK music exports, 43% of respondents said it was no longer viable for them to tour EU countries, with barriers to touring in Ireland being particularly negative. Musicians also used the survey to highlight a range of issues they face when touring in the EU, despite government and industry efforts to remove some barriers. Maximo Park singer Paul Smith explained this. I thought one of the aims of Brexit was to cut red tape, but there is more red tape than ever stopping us at the borders, and similar issues are also affecting international musicians coming into our country. Artists such as singer and songwriter Katie Melua said the cost of touring in the EU has increased by up to 30% after Brexit. And more examples of obstacles to touring can be found in a lot of those what the people say. Among artists affected by Brexit, one of the biggest problems remains obtaining visas and work permits, with 59% of respondents seeing this as the biggest problem. In addition, there are numerous other problems, some of which are related to Brexit, but some of which also go beyond it, so that European music associations recently called for an EU-wide dialogue on cross-border tours. A group of European music associations called on EU member states in July to start a dialogue with the music industry to discuss challenges in the European touring business. Just in time for Spain's EU Council presidency, the group consisting of IAO, that's International Artist Organization, Impala, the Independent Music Publishers and Labels Association, FIM, that's the International Federation of Musicians, EMEE, that's the European Music Exporters Exchange, Live DMA, Live Europe, and EMMA, that's the European Music Managers Alliance, published an open letter entitled A New European Vision for Touring. This addresses the specific problems that musicians are currently confronted with when they tour Europe. A new vision for European tours is needed that improves security, cooperation, and cross-border cultural exchange across the European Economic Area while promoting European culture and life scenes, they say. It stands to reason that Brexit will present artists in the UK with a new set of challenges when touring Europe. But they are not the only ones with difficulties. Also affected are venues and festivals, but also artists based in the EU who want to work with musicians outside the EU. Therefore, the open letter contains a list of problems. And these include, among other things, the visa problems for artists, access to customs licenses, the excessive tax burden, the current cabotage rules, the financing of events, and problems when transporting musical instruments by plane. The Schengen area in Europe already offers visa-free zones and a harmonized visa for tourism and business trips of up to 90 days. However, not all countries are covered by the zone. In addition, national regulations as to whether such a visa is sufficient vary depending on the country of origin. The open letter emphasizes that the EU has visa problems that extend beyond the Schengen area. In addition, the Schengen 90/180 regulation can cause problems for artists who do not come from the Schengen area. So-called Carnets, that means customs licenses that are necessary to import musical instruments and other equipment into the EU, can require security deposits of up to a third of the value of the instrument in question. The associated high costs are a particular burden on small and medium-sized bands and artists, and even prevent acts from touring within the EU. When artists perform in other European countries, a withholding tax is usually levied on the artist's fee, which can amount up to 30% of the fee depending on the country. This circumstance creates unfair opportunities for musicians of different origins, since US artists, for example, are exempt from this taxation. In addition to this high tax burden, there's usually double taxation of the artist's income by their respective home countries, although you've seen my one video on the EU that will reduce that. A community license on cabotage is required to transport goods within the region unless an exception applies. In practice, this means that the number of stops on a tour is limited unless exceptions apply. However, exceptions only apply to trucks with a gross vehicle weight of less than 2.5 tons, or in the event that the tour operator owns the equipment. However, both are not always the case. It should be examined to what extent the EU can use funding to address these problems. Furthermore, initiatives that have proven to be helpful in terms of financing should be further supported and expanded. Restrictions on the carriage of musical instruments on board aircraft significantly hinder the mobility of artists within the EU. Airlines do not have a consistent policy for carrying instruments as carry-on baggage, and airport staff's enforcement of existing policies remains arbitrary and unpredictable. Checking the instruments in as luggage is not an option, as there is a risk of damage. And I know this, I saw some of my suitcases. In order to best address these and other issues, the group asks for the continuation of initiatives that have already proven to be essential for the sector. On the one hand, this would give the EU Commission the opportunity to commission studies in this area, and on the other hand, to strengthen the development of mobility information points at the national level. And if you want to see the next video, it's right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.